So hello everyone, welcome to day 3 of our From an Industry Perspective Week IGTV series, and today we have Mr. Lascelle Tulloch, right? And as I've been reiterated from the starting of this event, right, the objective of this forum is to just enlighten engineers how to manage themselves in interviews as well as how to manage themselves when they actually land a job in industry. Right. So, Mr. Tulloch, could you just give us a brief introduction of yourselves by just stating your name, the university you graduated from, as well as the position you hold at the current company you work at?
Sure. Afternoon all. So as the host said, I am Lascelle Tulloch, a graduate of University of Technology in Jamaica, otherwise known as UTech, where I have 3 sets of qualification from them, all engineering related. I currently work at Jamalco, and I am a mechanical reliability engineer there.
All right, noted. So, how long have you been working at Jamal?
I'm approximately 2 years now, since 2019 July, so it's some months under 2 years.
All right, interesting. So, what is it like working there?
Well, compared to where I was, it's a more fast-paced industry. Um, you have to be focused and goal-oriented to be successful. So it took a little time to adapt, but I think I'm settling in well and doing what's required of me.
All right, you mentioned compared to where you were. So where were you before Jamalco? And
Well,
what was that like?
I was at Jamaica Packaging Industries, called JPI, formerly Corporate Jamaica Limited. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Went there in 2014. I was there for just over 5 years, where I was a junior production engineer in the first instance with responsibility for product development and quality assurance, then transitioned to reliability engineer, where I was in charge of the maintenance team. It's a much smaller operation, much smaller than where I'm at now. So you would have a little more time to get things done. You wouldn't be bombarded with that many things at once.
Yeah, cool. All right, so what was a regular day at GPI, you mentioned, right? As well as what is a regular day at Jamaica like?
A regular day, as defined by me at JPI, I'm a very early person, so I get to work sometimes maybe 2 hours before or hour before, which afford me the opportunity when they are starting up to view certain things and see if there are issues that you can correct before the startup is completed, as not to lose a lot of time. So doing that, you would set the pace of the day. So you might have new issues arising that will require attention or to put in solutions in the future. So we use that early part of the day to determine that. Plus, you'll always have things working on issues that would have been there before. Um, you have equipment issues, sourcing parts and stuff like that. So a large part of the day would be spent trying to clear a backlog of stuff, walking the floor as well, interacting with the people who are using the equipment to get a better understanding of improvements that could be done to make their lives easier and also to make the company more productive. And then we close out the day by doing a little report of what you would have done throughout the day and your focus for the next day. So that would have been at JPI. Currently at Jamalco, the day is pretty similar in the broad sense. We're still trying to get in early, but it's a much larger um, organization. The plant is a much larger than where I was. So you try to pick an area when you get in there to walk and to observe the equipment in operation, touch base with the operators as well to see if they had any issues. You have a lot of routine things that you do in terms of reports, field investigations, audits and stuff like that. So you would pick one or two of those for the day and goes to those and support the department in which you are assigned to. And you have a close-up meeting at the end of the day to tell what you would have achieved or what issues you are currently working.
All right, noted. So you mentioned the two jobs that one that you're at now and the one that you're at her. Cool. So at those jobs, I'm assuming you have to manage persons, right? Or you have to deal with persons that should report to you. So how do you maneuver that? Because clashing of characters and stuff might occur. So how do you deal with that if it does arise? Personalities,
Um,
actually.
well, at JPI, it was more, you had more people really reporting to you as opposed to Jamalco. The role at Jamalco does not broadly or generically speak to people really reporting to you. But you have people that you'll manage when you're running your projects and stuff like that. So what for me, I try to be understanding. That's the first thing I would use when I'm dealing with people, when you have to work with them, whether you are reporting to someone or they are reporting to you. So it is to understand them, um, and try to meet them at their needs. So you have persons who like information flowing to them. So where possible, you'd have the information flowing so that they don't be left out and they will be motivated. You have some persons who would like to be told that they are doing a good job. So once that is the case, you do that. So it is pretty much based on the person that you're supervising. Of course, the end of the day, the objective is to get the job done. So there is mutual respect as well that is required, and we have to maintain a certain quality and to execute the job effectively as well.
All right, cool. So prior to JPI, did you get the opportunity to have any other internships, or did you only worked at JPI and currently Jamal?
Well, I worked in terms of my industrial hours. I actually did it at UTech 2012, the FMD department, facilities management department. It was an interesting experience because most of what they would do is actually electrical based. And of course, I'm a mechanical engineer. But nonetheless, I learned quite a bit in terms of wiring and stuff like that. And you would have gotten some theory on it, but may not have had a full appreciation of it. So that was better explained with the practical experience there. So it was a very good, I think it was 2 months, a very good 2 months or 12 weeks thereabout, where I learned a lot as it relates to electricals.
All right, noted. So prior to, as a student, prior to entering the industry, you will hear a lot of myths, right? So now in the industry seasoned, I would say, were those debunked or were those confirmed? Were those denied? So if you did hear those myths, you can state them and then talk about it.
Well, I think being in university, you would get a lot of calculation and stuff. And it always wonder when or how would you apply those. So to be
Mhm.
honest, since being in the industry, quite a bit of those calculations would not have applied, but I don't think they were a waste of time because for me, having a qualification means that you're trainable, you can be trained, and being disciplined in university to understand those calculations and stuff like that may should translate to one being able to adapt to the working environment where you might not need to go in full details of those calculations, but really understanding the, the variables in the equations and stuff they help. For instance, pressure equals force over area. You might never ever have to do a calculation like that in industry, but you might buck up on a problem or meet up on a problem that having the knowledge that that is the formula for it will help you to solve it. So, all in all, I believe that coming through college and then transitioning to work, they are very different in terms of the expectation because the, the school will be theory, most theoretically based, while in the working world, it will be a lot of practical application. So for me, I believe that the better you are at understanding the theory, it will put you in a good position in terms of executing the practical.
All right, noted. All right, so what are some things you wish you knew before entering the industry? Can be re-engineering as well as real life, probably budgeting, how to manage this, how to manage that.
Well, I mean, so we did project management in school, in college, but of course, well, I can speak for myself. Certain course you're doing it on a theoretical basis. So when you get into the industry and you have a project to run, you understand critical path because in many instances the projects are required in a short time or they are urgent. So it means that your critical path has to be as short as possible. So what you would have learned in a theoretical base, it's slightly different than when you learning it in the practical sense. But nonetheless, it is the basis for which you can launch out on. So I'm thinking, I would say certain courses like fluid mechanics and thermodynamics, they have a lot of calculation and derivations and laws and stuff like that. And you would have probably
Mm-hmm.
gone through them at that time in college, not really fully understanding the practical sense of it. So then when you would have gone in the industry, you then can go back in your mind and say, oh, that's what it was talking about. I remember a situation where you're not getting a certain cooling of a product. And then it was largely thought that there was an issue with maybe a pump or something to that effect. But then when you look back at um, thermodynamics or heat transfer in terms of the laws of heat transfer and convection, the law clearly states that there were X variables that could interfere or cause the issues. And then when you look at that, it can be very different than what you think practically. So as I said, making that connection between the theory and the practical is where the challenge would have been.
All right, noted. So, do you enjoy what you do? Do you wake up and say, yes, I'm excited to go to work today?
Definitely. So how I am, I think I was wired to be an engineer, a mechanical engineer. So I do enjoy solving problems. Mind you, I don't like when I have too many problems, but nonetheless, I
Yeah.
do enjoy solving problems, and it gives you opportunity to learn. And also, once you learn, you should be able to put systems in place to prevent any such recurrence of the problems you have encountered. So it's something I love, I look forward to. I'll spend a good amount of time doing research, trying to understand systems, how they operate, and to see where can solve problems as best as possible.
And noted. So was like the transition from university to industry difficult?
Well, I went from university and went to JPI some months after. My job description there would have been pretty much in line with what how you'd operate at the university. So I found that the
Mhm.
transition from UTech to then it was Corporate Jamaica Limited was not very difficult because I was a junior production engineer with responsibility for product development and quality assurance. So product development had a lot to do with designs and prototypes and stuff like that and calculations. So you can understand that that's not too dissimilar from a lab or a practical subject at the university. So in that case, I thought I was lucky and the transition was not difficult. I do believe if the transition was straight from the university to Jamalco, it would have been more challenging because it is more practical. So it really requires having some knowledge of systems to be effective. Of course, there's framework for help persons who would have been there before and your supervisor. So I think that would have smoothed it out. But I was lucky to have gone to a company, corporate then now JPI, that the requirements of my day to day would be very much similar to that of being in the university.
Okay. So as students, we're often encouraged to be mindful when going into interviews, how the how the pace be, right? So was that ever an issue for you?
So interviews or jobs.
Mhm.
Sorry, could you repeat? I didn't hear part of the question well.
I'm saying oftentimes as students, we are advised to pay keen attention to how they pay us as engineers. So I'm asking, was that ever a factor when you were applying?
No, well, for me, I just wanted a job, to be honest. I'll be very honest.
Mhm.
Because I would have graduated, well, I would have finished school about the June of 2013, thereabout. Got graduation in November, and I never started working until March of 2014. So by then, you had some amount of frustration. And for me, knowing that I was, let's say, fresh out of school without much practical knowledge or experience. For me, I personally just wanted to get my hands on something and whatever sacrifice, whether we were getting a very small pay, I believe that I would have sacrificed learning for the pay so that it would put me in a very good position after a couple of years. So, I mean, we always want more and nothing is wrong with that. And I do believe in instances interacting with people from different industries locally and interacting with people who would have been classmates with and stuff who would have migrated. You see that in Jamaica, the pay scales are very different. And I don't know if that's a direct relation to us being developing and for the other countries being developed, but there is a disparity and it's something that we all will talk about. But at the end of the day, we need to gain whatever experience we can, make ourselves very marketable so that
Market.
we then can command a certain remuneration for our service.
All right. Noted. You mentioned you got it in June 2013 and never get a job till March 2014, right?
Yeah.
So in that time, what were you doing?
Well, to be honest, I was a bit of a nerd, but I'm not sure I am now. So I really spent a lot of time to sharpen up on the subjects that I would have gone through at the university. I probably not had a full knowledge of. I would have gone over those stuff and took some time to, I'd say, defrost the mind because it was a lot of years consecutive studying, having done a diploma and a degree. So it was more rest, spending time with the family, and actually sharpening up on some of the key subjects or principles that we should have known as a student.
All right. So other from your undergrad degree, right? Do you have any other certifications, any other degrees?
Well, I have a master's in engineering management um, from UTech as well. I have a couple certifications in like energy audit, safety, root cause analysis, and ISO 9001 audit.
All right. So you have your cert, you have your master's. So what would you advise someone? Get your master's first, then as they done a degree, get your master's, focus on short courses. What would you advise?
For me, it's very much dependent on the individual, what their goal is or their goals are. So you do have those who may have a need that they have to start working for whatever reason. So they might not be in a position to, after a first qualification, to seek other qualifications. So they might have to jump right in the industry to be able to sort themselves out. You might have other persons whose goals might be to lecture, might be to develop stuff, and they would be the kind of persons who may want to continue studying or having finished one qualification go straight into another. But I think it comes down to the individual. So I don't think there's a broad statement to say go and get another qualification once you would have completed one, or go in the industry and work. But what I can say is normally in the industry, a balance is what's appreciated. So you might want to pick up some experience um, if your goal is to work in an industry. Because face it, engineering is very practical. And if you are to study, say 4 years or 3 years, your undergrad, and then do another 2 or 3 years for a master's, you would have a lot of qualification behind your name, but in terms of your impact or your potential for impact on the industry, that would be questioned. So you have to be careful what direction you go.
All right. Noted. So basically wrapping up this interview. So now I want you to just share some interview tips as it related to industry jobs. Like how should we say a job being advertised in the newspaper, all right. We just get our qualifications in type like a resume, cover letter, send it to you, then call you and say you come for an interview. We're there now. How do we handle ourselves?
Well, the general thing would be to have knowledge of the industry that you're trying to go in. So if you see a job for, say, JPS for argument's sake, you would want to know something about JPS and whatever the role is that you're applying for. You would really want to have a good idea of the role and what would be required from you. Because the interview um, will be trying to, let's face it, they will have a lot of people who have applied. Many people will have a similar resume and a cover letter. because many of you might have been classmates. So everybody have these
The
subjects,
same thing.
these grades. So now the employer has to narrow down candidates based on the exact same thing. So it is to set yourself apart from the rest of person. Um, Involvement is a very critical one because a lot of employers, they would really like to know that you're not just, as they would term it, maybe a nerd or a book person, but you can interact and associate. So you would have had some extracurricular activities to show that you can balance your time. Because in the industry, it is a lot about balancing time because being in school, you would be a part of a family. So you have your parents or guardians and siblings. Maybe if based on your age, you might be married and stuff and have children, but generally speaking, that won't happen until you would have been in the industry. So at that point in time, you now have to be able to balance family life and work life. So they would want to know that based on your resume and your stuff like and your cover letter that there is potential in terms of your having done it in the past, balancing your schoolwork with extra co-curricular activities. So I think being involved is critical, not being involved to the detriment of your studies, but being involved, that is very, very critical. So yeah, so being involved, um, try to be a part of societies. So whether they are engineering societies or GIE, any such thing, that will also build a knowledge base because from time to time they'll have a lot of events or tours that will give you a little more of the practical side that you. So try to be involved as much as possible and have a good knowledge of the company and the position to which you are applying.
All right. Thank you. So now, could you just share some encouraging words to prospective engineers as well as unemployed graduates? Um, Especially prospective engineers, because we're now dubbed as the online engineers. So they're basically saying that we don't have the practical sense. So how can we be effective engineers? Why should an employer see us and say, hey, I need you, when we don't really have the practical aspect?
Well, it's a tricky one. And to be honest, it will come down to what the employer wants. Because if the employer has a position to fill that is maybe a senior position or so, it's very unlikely for them to try to take in an engineer that's just coming out of school. But there's hope because you do have industries that they like to build the engineers. Um, So it means that they will definitely they will speak that they need a recent graduate who is trainable. So you have to be vigilant and look out for those opportunities. And there's globalization, of course. I might not speak too much on that as a nationalist, but there's globalization. So there's room also for that as well. But it is going to college, try to learn as much as you can. Build your network base. Your lecturers, they would have, in some instances, be persons in the industries, have connections. And internship is very good. Try to make a mark there. Be humble and try to learn as much as you can because that might be a foot in an organization. Because if you come in as an intern and you're able to work with possibly an engineer that's there before and solve certain problems. They will look at you as being a person with great potential. And if the need arises or there's a job vacancy, they may look to you. So we have to be very smart about what we do. So we have to do well in our academics, build our network base, and try to be seen. So be a part of societies like GIE, where you'd be going on probably tours and events with the CEOs of companies and stuff like that. And that's how you will get a foot in. And once you get the foot in, you need to make it count. Because as you know, there are a lot of people that require a job, and jobs might be, you might have less jobs than people that need jobs. So it means that once you get a foot in, you have to make it count.
All right. So essentially, make everything count. Right.
Yes.
So thank you, Mr. Tulloch, for just having this conversation with us, sharing your experience, sharing tips as to how to approach industry. Right. So on behalf of the Faculty of Engineering and Applied Technology Student Committee, I just want to extend another thank you again, for your contribution for the execution of this event. Right. So good. So hey guys, please stay tuned for tomorrow. Keep the same momentum as we continue to listen to From an Industry Perspective Week IGTV series. My name is Kishana Bell, FEET SC President.